Time is a funny thing. We measure it in work weeks, daily errands, and the quick glow of our screens. We have built very comfortable walls to block out the wild. But there's still a quiet pull inside us. An ancient curiosity telling us that the concrete and the highways aren't the whole story out there. The Earth is still breathing. Geologists know that our planet is constantly erasing its own map. Continents drift, oceans rise. The paradise we see today, the fragile coral atolls and the isolated sunken volcanoes, are temporary. They are fleeting masterpieces. Traveling to these final frontiers is not a normal vacation. It is a pilgrimage for the human soul. A chance to stand on the edge of the world, feel the heavy, humid air on your skin, and realize how incredibly small we really are. We need to see these untouched corners of the globe before they change forever. We have tracked down 30 of these vanishing, surreal environments. 30 places you have to see in your lifetime. And our countdown starts right now, with number 30. A place so completely cut off by the violent currents of the Arabian Sea that the trees bleed a dark red sap, and the landscape looks like it belongs to another planet entirely. Number 30. Socotra, Yemen. If you were dropped on this island blindfolded, you would swear you had left Earth. The air hits you first. It is thick, hot, and heavy with salt from the rough Arabian Sea. Beneath your boots, the ground is sharp, cracked limestone. It is a harsh place. But life didn't just survive here. It went its own way. Millions of years ago, Socotra ripped away from the African continent. The ocean locked it in a watery vault, and evolution was left to run wild, entirely unsupervised. When you look across the dry plateaus, you see them, the undisputed kings of this strange landscape. The dragon's blood trees. They look like giant inside-out umbrellas, or massive mushrooms made of wood. Their thick, tangled branches are shaped perfectly to catch the morning mist, funneling tiny drops of precious water down their smooth trunks to the roots. It is an ancient survival trick in a land that almost never sees rain. But the real mystery is hiding just beneath the surface. If you slice the bark of one of these ancient trees, it bleeds. A thick, bright red sap oozes out. 2,000 years ago, Roman gladiators would buy this resin at a massive premium. They rubbed it into their skin before stepping into the arena, truly believing it was the magic blood of ancient dragons that would quickly heal their battle wounds. Even today, local Bedouin tribes harvest it carefully to use as medicine. Standing in a forest of bleeding trees, you realize how fragile this kind of isolation is. Socotra is a rare breathing museum. It survived because the harsh ocean kept the rest of the world away. But halfway across the globe, deep in the Atlantic Ocean, there is another island playing hide and seek. Only this time, it is not just the sea keeping people away. It is a strict human quarantine guarding a marine time capsule that very few are ever allowed to see. Number 29. Fernando de Noronha, Brazil. Imagine finding the perfect stretch of sand. The water is absolute glass. The horizon is empty. Now imagine being told you might not be allowed to step foot on it. 200 miles off the coast of Brazil sits Fernando de Noronha, a volcanic archipelago standing alone in the deep Atlantic. The wind here carries the sharp, clean scent of salt and wild orchids. Today, it is an ecological fortress. The government strictly limits the number of people who can fly in every day. You even have to pay a daily tax just to walk the beaches. But this intense protection hides a much darker past. For over 200 years, this ultimate paradise was a brutal, inescapable prison. The deep, heavy ocean currents that now protect its vibrant coral reefs once acted as the ultimate prison walls for Brazil's worst criminals. The weathered stone ruins of their forts still watch over the bays. Because normal human life was kept away for so long, the ocean never learned to be afraid. Slip beneath the surface, and the water is so clear you can see 150 feet in any direction. It feels like flying in slow motion. Hundreds of wild spinner dolphins use the quiet coves to rest, leaping from the waves exactly as they did centuries ago. Sea turtles glide slowly past the rocks, completely undisturbed by the modern world. Noronha is a sanctuary guarded by strict human laws, but our next destination doesn't need rules to keep its secrets safe. Halfway across the world, there is a paradise protected by nature itself. A maze of towering, razor-sharp rock walls rising straight out of the ocean, hiding secret, emerald waters that feel completely disconnected from reality. Number 28. Palawan, Philippines. Sometimes, A map lies to you. You look at the edge of the Philippines and it shows a solid line of land, but when you actually get out on the water, you realize the earth here is completely shattered. The air is thick with heat and the faint, sweet scent of jungle orchids. All you hear is the slow, rhythmic splash of a wooden paddle. You are gliding past towering knife-edged cliffs that rise out of the ocean like dark, jagged teeth. These massive black rock walls are not normal mountains. They are actually ancient coral reefs. Millions of years ago, everything you see was completely underwater. Slowly, tectonic plates collided and pushed the ancient ocean floor straight up into the sky. Today, thick jungle vines cling to the fossilized bones of the sea. The indigenous Tagbanua people have navigated this dangerous maze for thousands of years. For generations, they fiercely protected these hidden waters, believing that powerful ancient spirits lived in the deepest, quietest lagoons. When you find a narrow crack in the stone, hold your breath and paddle through the dark. You emerge into a secret world. The towering walls block out the wind. The water turns a vivid, glowing emerald. It is so perfectly still, you can hear water dripping from the limestone high above. It feels like stepping into a private cathedral carved by the ocean itself. Palawan is a fortress made of ancient, unyielding stone. But thousands of miles away, there is a shoreline that refuses to sit still. A blindingly bright environment, entirely defined by movement, where the ocean acts like a restless artist, painting a completely new landscape of pure white sand every single day. Number 27. Whitsunday Islands, Australia. Most beaches are just crushed up rocks and dead coral. They heat up in the midday sun. They stick heavily to your skin. But the shore at Whitehaven is different. It defies the normal rules of the earth. As you step off the boat, you naturally brace for the burning heat of the intense Australian sun radiating off the ground. But that heat never comes. The sand beneath your bare feet is remarkably cool to the touch. It feels softer than powdered sugar. And as you walk, it actually lets out a high, quiet squeak. This is not normal sand. It is 98% pure silica. It is so flawless and so brilliantly white that scientists actually use sand from this exact beach to help make the glass lenses for the Hubble Space Telescope. But here is the strangest part. The Whitsunday Islands are volcanic. There is absolutely no silica rock anywhere nearby to create this beach. Geologists believe this incredibly pure sand was dragged here by ancient sea currents over millions of years, trapped in this one specific pocket of the ocean, and left behind as the ice ages came and went. Twice a day, the tide rushes in and pulls back out. The ocean acts like a giant, restless brush, swirling the heavy white silica and the vivid turquoise water together. It creates a massive marbled painting across the inlet. Because the sand shifts with every single wave, you're looking at a living landscape that will never look exactly like this ever again. Whitehaven is defined by constant bright motion, a blindingly white canvas that never rests. But if we travel deep into the Indian Ocean, we find a place where time completely stopped. A dark, hushed island forest, completely shielded from the sun, hiding a quiet botanical giant from a long-forgotten age. Number 26. Seychelles, Praslin. For hundreds of years, sailors crossing the Indian Ocean would occasionally find something strange washed up on the sand. Massive, incredibly heavy seeds. The largest on Earth, some weighing up to 60 pounds. But no one could figure out where they came from. When these seeds fall into the water, they sink. It is only after they sit on the ocean floor for years, slowly decaying and hollowed out, that the empty shells finally float to the surface and drift away. Because of this, early explorers genuinely believed these giant seeds grew on a mythical, magical forest at the bottom of the sea. The truth is actually hiding high up in the hills of a tiny island called Praslin. When you walk into the Vallée de Mai, the temperature drops. The canopy overhead is so thick, it almost entirely blocks out the intense tropical sun. The air smells heavily of damp soil and deep, ancient time. It is incredibly quiet, except for the eerie, hollow sound of the wind dragging across palm leaves the size of small cars. This is a primeval forest, a living piece of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana that survived the splitting of the earth. And standing right in the shadows is the source of the old sailor legends, the legendary Coco de Mer palm. Nature is in absolutely no rush here. It can take up to 40 years for one of these towering trees just to produce its first flower, and it takes another 10 years for a single massive seed to fully ripen. Walking these hushed trails feels like a gentle, quiet pause. The forest is completely sheltered, a slow and peaceful survivor in the middle of a vast ocean. But half a world away, in the deep Pacific, there is a coastline that gets no peace at all. A coastline that fights a daily, violent war against the weather, resulting in a towering wall of velvet green stone that guards the edge of the world. Number 25. Kauai, Hawaii, Na Pali Coast. There are places on Earth where the land and the ocean are at war. And standing on the western edge of Kauai, you can watch the battle happen. You don't just see the Na Pali coast, you feel it. The wind carries the raw, heavy smell of sea spray and crushed ferns. Far below, the Pacific crashes violently against black volcanic rock. Above you, walls of bright green rise 4,000 feet straight up into the clouds. In Hawaiian, Pali simply means cliffs. But these are not normal mountains. They are the rapidly decaying remains of a massive shield volcano. Just a few miles inland sits Mount Waialae, officially one of the wettest spots on the entire planet. For over 5 million years, that relentless pounding rain has acted like a chisel. It slowly carved deep vertical grooves into the stone, creating steep, razor-thin ridges that look like green velvet draped over a giant's fingers. It looks entirely impossible to live here, yet for centuries, ancient Hawaiians thrived in these hanging, isolated valleys. They built complex stone terraces and grew crops on slopes so sheer that one wrong step meant falling hundreds of feet. To reach their homes, they had to paddle wooden outrigger canoes through thrashing ocean swells or navigate highly dangerous, crumbling footpaths right along the cliff edge. The Na Pali coast is a vertical fortress, a solid, unyielding wall of green stone standing firm against the open water. But if we travel southwest, plunging into the warm tropical currents of Indonesia, we find a completely different kind of frontier. A place where the land shatters into thousands of tiny, broken islands, hiding a chaotic and crowded underwater kingdom that pulses with more life than anywhere else on Earth. Number 24. Raja Ampat, Indonesia. If you want to find the most crowded, chaotic neighborhood on Earth, you have to leave the cities behind. You have to jump in. The shock of the cool water instantly cuts through the heavy equatorial heat. As you sink below the surface, the loud hum of the boat engine fades away. It is replaced by the slow, rhythmic hiss of your own breathing. And then your eyes adjust. It is like falling into a living kaleidoscope. Everywhere you look, there is motion. Flashes of electric yellow and neon blue. Massive, slow-moving manta rays passing overhead like silent clouds. Millions of tiny silver fish moving together as one single shimmering wall. This is Raja Ampat in the local language. The name translates to the Four Kings. According to ancient mythology, a woman walking through the thick jungle discovered 7 mysterious eggs. 4 of them eventually hatched into men who took control and became the kings of the 4 main islands you see here today. As for the other 3 eggs, the legend says they hatched into a ghost, a woman, and a single heavy stone. But the real magic of the 4 kings is not just a myth. It is pure geographic luck. This remote archipelago sits exactly at the crossroads where the warm, heavy currents of the Indian and Pacific Oceans crash into each other. That collision acts like a massive underwater funnel. It sweeps up endless nutrients and traps them right here in the shallows. Scientists actually call this place a species factory. There are simply more types of fish and coral packed into these specific reefs than anywhere else on the planet. It is a loud, vivid explosion of life, entirely fueled by moving water. But if we travel far across the ocean to the eastern edge of Africa, the moving water isn't building a coral kingdom. Instead, the ocean floor is pulling off a massive, terrifying trick on the eyes, making it look as though the entire sea is suddenly draining down a giant, endless waterfall. Number 23. Mauritius, Underwaterfall. Our eyes are trained to trust what they see. When you look down from high above the Indian Ocean, right at the southwestern edge of Mauritius, your brain immediately rings an alarm. Through the loud, heavy rhythm of the helicopter blades chopping the hot tropical air, you look down and see the impossible. The bright, shallow turquoise water suddenly gives way. It looks exactly as if the ocean floor has cracked wide open, and millions of gallons of water are rushing down a massive submerged waterfall. You feel a strange, sudden sense of vertigo just looking at the dark blue plunge. But the truth is a geographical magic trick. Mauritius is a very young volcanic island, and it sits on top of a massive submarine plateau. For miles around the coast, the water is incredibly shallow and safe. But right at this specific edge, that shelf abruptly ends. It drops completely off, plunging over 2 miles straight down into the cold, black abyss. What you're actually seeing isn't water falling at all. It is sand. The powerful, heavy coastal currents are constantly sweeping bright white sand and crushed silt across the shallow shelf and pushing it right over the edge of the underwater cliff. It is a slow, endless avalanche of sand bleeding down into the deep ocean. As the white sand falls against the dark water, it paints the perfect, fluid illusion of a waterfall trapped under the sea. It is a brilliant trick of the light and the current. The island here isn't actually collapsing. But if we travel further north, right to the equator, the sinking is very real. We find a fragile, fading ring of coral, barely keeping its head above water, creating a temporary, beautiful sanctuary where giants of the deep gather to perform an ancient, synchronized dance. Number 22. The Maldives, Ba Atoll. There is a heavy, quiet truth hanging over the Indian Ocean. Some of the most stunning places on our planet are built entirely on borrowed time. As your boat cuts across the Ba Atoll, the equatorial sun is almost blindingly bright. The water here isn't just blue. It is a glowing electric cyan that actually hurts your eyes if you stare at it too long. You are skimming over the very tops of ancient, drowned volcanoes. That is all the Maldives really are. A massive string of fragile coral crowns sitting perfectly on top of mountains that sank into the dark abyss millions of years ago. The highest natural point in this entire country is barely 8 feet above the waves. It is a nation balancing on a knife's edge. But this delicate sinking geography creates a very specific kind of magic. Every year during the summer monsoon, the strong winds and pulling currents force millions of microscopic plankton into a tiny dead-end coral channel called Hanifaru Bay. The reef acts like a massive underwater vacuum, trapping the food in a thick, cloudy soup. And the giants know exactly when the trap is set. When you slip into the warm water, the quiet ocean is suddenly full of fast-moving shadows. Hundreds of wild reef manta rays, some with wingspans as wide as a car, arrive for the feast. They don't swim, they fly. They line up, one behind the other, spinning in massive synchronized circles to force the trapped plankton straight into their open mouths. Sometimes, they barrel roll over and over in the exact same spot. The water around you becomes chaotic and thick, yet they never once collide. You are watching a silent, ancient ballet, choreographed entirely by the wind and the tide. The Bay Atoll is a fleeting masterpiece. A temporary paradise resting just inches above the deep. But halfway across the world, right in the middle of the vast Pacific, there is another sunken volcano. Only this one left behind a towering, jagged tombstone, surrounded by a ring of water so impossibly bright, it completely rewrites our understanding of the color blue. Number 21. Bora Bora, French Polynesia. If you stare at the water here for too long, your brain starts to play tricks on you. It doesn't look like real water. It looks like glowing, liquid neon. As your boat cuts across the lagoon, the heavy scent of wild vanilla and salt hangs in the thick, humid air. The water underneath you is so impossibly bright, it actually reflects a faint blue tint onto the white clouds passing overhead. Right in the center of all this glowing color stands Mount Otomanu, a dark, jagged spike of sheer black rock violently cutting into the sky. It is an incredibly dramatic contrast. But this famous peaceful lagoon is actually the side effect of a very slow death. Millions of years ago, Bora Bora was a massive active volcano towering high above the South Pacific. But the Earth's crust here is thin, and volcanoes are incredibly heavy. Over countless centuries, the island has been slowly collapsing under its own immense weight, slowly sinking back down into the dark ocean that made it. As the heavy mountain sinks, a protective ring of coral grows furiously upward toward the sunlight, trapping the shallow water inside. That sharp, black peak standing in the center is simply the very last piece of the volcano, still holding its breath above the surface. It is a striking, beautiful tombstone for a dying mountain. And someday, that peak will vanish completely beneath the waves, leaving behind nothing but an empty ring of sand. Bora Bora is a paradise defined by slow geological collapse. But thousands of miles away, off the sweltering eastern coast of Africa, there is an island built on a much more frantic human history. A place where wild coral reefs crash into narrow, winding alleys of weathered stone, and the wind carries the heavy, ancient scent of a global empire built entirely on spices. Number 20. Zanzibar, Tanzania. Close your eyes, and this island will tell you exactly where you are before you even open them. The air here doesn't just feel heavy with the equatorial heat. It carries a scent. As you step onto the docks, the hot wind hitting your face smells sharply of cloves, wild cinnamon, and black pepper. It is a thick, sweet perfume that has been blowing across this water for hundreds of years. Welcome to Zanzibar. Walking through the narrow, twisting alleys of Stone Town is like walking through a faded, weathered map of the ancient world. If you run your hands along the tall, crumbling buildings, you will feel the rough, sharp edges of the ocean. These winding streets aren't made of normal rock. They are built almost entirely out of coral rag, actual coral reefs hauled straight out of the sea and baked hard in the African sun. Back in the 1800s, this tiny speck of land off the coast of Tanzania was the absolute center of the global spice trade. The scent of these fields generated so much unimaginable wealth that in 1832, the powerful Sultan of Oman did something completely unheard of. He packed up his entire royal court, abandoned his massive Arabian empire, and permanently moved his capital thousands of miles away, right here to this tiny island in the Indian Ocean. Today, that rich, heavy human history meets the wild rhythm of the sea. Out on the blindingly bright water, traditional wooden dhow boats with massive white triangular sails cut quietly through the turquoise waves, exactly as they did 1,000 years ago. Just below their wooden hulls, vibrant, shallow reefs crowd the coastline, buzzing with bright, frantic marine life. It is an island where the ghosts of an ancient empire sit quietly in the baking sun, watching the tide roll in. Zanzibar is a noisy, fragrant crossroads shaped entirely by human ambition. But if we leave the trade winds behind and sail into the vast blue emptiness of the South Pacific, the human footprint entirely disappears. We arrive at a scattering of remote, silent volcanic rocks, a place defined by absolute, raw isolation, where you can finally understand what it truly means to be a castaway. Number 19. Fiji, Mamanuca Islands. Look at a globe. Spin it until you only see the Pacific Ocean. It is almost completely blue, an endless, intimidating stretch of deep water. But if you look very closely, scattered like coarse sand across the equator, there are tiny specks of land. When you step off a small boat in the Mamanuca Islands of Fiji, the first thing you notice is the sound, or really the lack of it. There is no hum of electricity, no distant traffic, just the dry rattle of palm fronds in the wind and the slow, heavy wash of the tide against the shore. These islands look soft and welcoming, but underneath the white sand they have a harsh, violent origin. The Mamanucas are the jagged, exposed tops of ancient volcanoes, and despite being surrounded by billions of gallons of water, surviving here is an ancient puzzle. Out of the 20 or so islands in this tiny chain, several have never been permanently inhabited by humans. The reason is a quiet geographical trap. The black volcanic rock here is highly porous. When the heavy tropical rains fall, the ground acts like a giant sieve, immediately draining almost all the fresh water straight back into the salty ocean. There are no rivers, no hidden springs. You're standing on a dry, beautiful desert, right in the middle of the sea. It is exactly why the movie Castaway was filmed on one of these untouched islands. The absolute raw isolation you see on screen wasn't a Hollywood trick. It is a permanent fact of life out here. The Mamanucas give you the quiet, solitary thrill of standing on a deserted rock at the end of the world. But further east, hidden deep in the ocean, there is an island that didn't just survive the water. It was entirely built by it. A perfectly still, giant ring of coral, where the ancient rhythm of Polynesian life has completely frozen in time. Number 18. Cook Islands, Aitutaki. Imagine trying to find a needle in a haystack. Now imagine the haystack is the Pacific Ocean, and you are navigating in a carved wooden canoe, using absolutely nothing but the night sky and the flight paths of seabirds. When you approach Aitutaki from the air, you don't really see an island. You see a massive glowing triangle of shallow water, perfectly outlined by a jagged barrier reef. As you step off a small skiff onto a tiny sandbank they call 1 Foot Island, the water is only knee-deep. It is remarkably warm. It is so perfectly clear that you can count the tiny ridges on the Seychelles resting on the ocean floor. The breeze carries the soft, sweet scent of tiar flowers and roasting coconut husks. This vast, incredibly calm lagoon is actually the crater of a massive sunken volcano. The heavy coral wall perfectly blocks the violent ocean swells, creating a shallow, completely silent sanctuary in the middle of a raging sea. 1,000 years ago, the legendary Polynesian explorer Ru brought his people across the terrifying open ocean to settle exactly here. They didn't have maps or compasses. To find this tiny speck of safety, ancient navigators actually read the sky. They looked for a faint, pale green reflection bouncing off the underside of the clouds, a subtle trick of light caused entirely by the shallow, bright lagoon below. Because of that natural coral wall, the water inside never crashes. It barely even ripples. It is an environment built for total stillness, preserving a slow, quiet rhythm of life that has survived here for centuries. Aitutaki is a bright, shallow haven reaching up to catch the sun. But our next destination goes strictly in the opposite direction. Halfway across the world, just off the coast of Central America, the ocean floor suddenly collapses. The bright turquoise water gives way to a massive, pitch-black sinkhole, a terrifying drop into the abyss that holds frozen, dark secrets from the Earth's last ice age. Number 17. Belize, Great Blue Hole. Sometimes, the ocean doesn't just cover the Earth. It swallows it whole. When you fly over the Lighthouse Reef off the coast of Belize, the Caribbean Sea is a bright, friendly turquoise. The water is warm, shallow, and full of light, but suddenly, right in the middle of the coral, the ocean floor simply vanishes. You are looking at a perfect, massive circle of deep navy blue water. It measures over 1,000 feet across. From the sky, it looks like a giant, dark pupil staring straight back up at you. When you dive over the edge, the bright tropical sunlight fades fast. The water gets noticeably colder. The vibrant coral reefs are gone. And as you sink deeper into the shadows, you realize you are not swimming through a normal ocean trench. You are actually swimming through a flooded cave. At about 130 feet down, giant stone icicles emerge from the gloom. Massive stalactites, some as wide as a giant oak tree, hang silently from the limestone overhangs. But here is the geographical puzzle. Stalactites can only form in open air. They are created by single drops of water, falling over tens of thousands of years, which means during the Earth's last ice age, this terrifying underwater hole was actually completely dry land. It was a massive, quiet cavern system. But as the planet eventually warmed, the massive glaciers melted. The sea levels violently rose, completely flooding the cave and eventually collapsing its roof. The ocean locked this dry world under hundreds of feet of heavy water, freezing it perfectly in time. The Great Blue Hole is a dark, flooded graveyard of a forgotten age. But if we travel south, leaving the Caribbean and heading far out into the open Pacific, we find a chain of islands that refuses to be frozen in the past. It is a harsh, boiling crucible of black volcanic rock, where a brutal daily fight to stay alive eventually changed how humanity understands the very origins of life on Earth. Number 16. Galapagos Islands, Ecuador. If you were a bird flying over the Pacific Ocean a few million years ago, you wouldn't see anything here but open water. And then, the ocean floor simply cracked open. When you step onto the shores of the Galapagos today, it doesn't immediately feel like a tropical vacation. It feels like a raw, unfinished planet. The air smells sharply of sulfur and dry, heavy salt. The ground under your boots is a chaotic mess of jagged, black lava rock that absorbs the brutal equatorial sun. It is a harsh, unforgiving place. This island chain sits 600 miles off the coast of Ecuador. Because it was born from underwater fire, it started completely empty. Every single animal that lives here had to somehow cross a terrifying stretch of open, violent ocean just to arrive. Biologists believe the ancestors of the famous giant tortoises and the island's reptiles likely washed up here by pure accident, clinging desperately to floating rafts of broken jungle debris. But surviving that massive journey was only half the battle. Because there was almost no food on this dry volcanic rock, the animals had to change the way they lived, fast. If you sit quietly by the crashing waves, you will see a creature that exists absolutely nowhere else on Earth. The marine iguana. When Charles Darwin arrived here, he famously wrote them off as hideous imps of darkness. But they are actually a brilliant survival story to avoid starving on the barren rocks. These land reptiles figured out how to hold their breath, dive deep into the freezing ocean currents, and scrape algae off the underwater reefs. And because they swallow so much heavy seawater while they eat, they developed a special gland that allows them to literally sneeze pure white salt out of their noses to keep their bodies from shutting down. When you walk past them, they don't even flinch, because they spent millions of years evolving out here entirely alone. They never learned to be afraid of predators. They never learned to fear us. The Galapagos is a wide-open, brutal laboratory where life was forced to adapt just to survive the fire. But thousands of miles west, there is a much quieter kind of evolution hiding in the dark. A place where the Earth folded inward to create completely isolated secret jungle lakes, trapping millions of soft, golden creatures that slowly, over countless centuries, forgot how to fight back. Number 15. Palau, Rock Islands. Imagine the ocean acting not as a highway, but as a vault. A place where the water doesn't connect you to the rest of the world, but completely seals you off. When you cut through the humid, heavy air of Palau in a small boat, you find yourself navigating a bizarre, dizzying maze. Over 300 tiny, bright green islands sit scattered across the Philippine Sea. But they don't slope gently into the water like normal beaches. They look like massive, floating emerald mushrooms. The dark, salty water has spent thousands of years slowly eating away at their soft limestone bases. The ocean has undercut the rock so severely that it looks as if the heavy jungle islands are barely balancing on top of the sea. It is what hides deep inside these limestone towers that holds the real mystery. 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age ended, sea levels rose and flooded the porous cracks of this rock. Eventually, the water settled, trapping deep pools of the ocean completely inside the islands. It created isolated, hidden saltwater lakes right in the middle of the dense jungle. And trapped inside that water were ordinary jellyfish. With absolutely no natural predators in these dark pools, and nowhere left to run, they didn't need to fight to survive anymore. Over countless generations, their bodies changed. They completely lost their ability to sting. When you hike over the sharp, unforgiving rocks and finally slide into the warm green water of Jellyfish Lake, you are instantly surrounded. Millions of soft, golden creatures pulse silently against your skin. You can brush right past them without feeling a thing. They spend every single day simply following the path of the sun across the surface of the lake, absorbing the light to feed the tiny algae living inside their own bodies. It is a peaceful alien rhythm. You're swimming inside a forgotten pocket of time where nature literally unlearned how to go to war. Palau is a maze of isolated rock that locked the ocean safely away in the dark. But if we travel far across the globe to the warm edge of South America, we find a sanctuary hiding out in the wide open, a brilliant shallow kaleidoscope of Caribbean water, fiercely protected from the heavy sea by a massive silent wall of ancient coral. Number 14. Los Roques, Venezuela. The Caribbean Sea is not always gentle. It is a massive, fast-moving body of water that constantly pounds against the coastlines of the Americas. But if you know exactly where to look, 80 miles off the coast of Venezuela, the ocean simply stops fighting. As you wade into the water at Los Roques, you don't feel a heavy current pulling at your ankles. You don't hear the loud roar of crashing waves. The trade wind is constant, carrying the dry, baking heat of the South American sun, but the ocean itself is completely silent. It feels like stepping into a giant, warm swimming pool made of blue glass. This unnatural calm is all thanks to a massive hidden wall. Just out of sight, right where the dark blue water begins, sits a jagged barrier reef stretching over 20 miles long. It acts like a submerged fortress, taking the absolute full, violent force of the open ocean. Inside that wall, the reef protects a shallow, brightly lit lagoon dotted with more than 300 tiny, flat sandbanks. It is a rare geographical anomaly, It is one of the only true atoll formations in the entire Caribbean. Long before the modern world mapped these waters, ancient indigenous tribes braved the dangerous, rough ocean in small wooden vessels just to reach this quiet haven. They didn't come to live here permanently because there is absolutely no fresh water. They came specifically to harvest the giant queen conch hiding in the shallow seagrass. Even today, if you walk far enough down the blindingly white beaches of certain cays, you will stumble upon massive piles of sun-bleached, heavy conch shells. They are ancient, undisturbed trash piles left behind by those early fishermen over 1,000 years ago. Los Roques is a brightly lit, wide-open sanctuary where the ocean has absolutely nowhere to hide. But if we leave this clear Caribbean pool and travel deep into the Bay of Bengal, the water gets dark. We are heading into a tangled, shifting maze of ancient roots, a remote, heavily forested shoreline where stepping onto the beach means leaving one of the rarest things left on our modern planet. A completely new human footprint. Number 13, Andaman Islands, India. We like to think we have finally conquered the map. We assume that every beach has been walked and every jungle has been thoroughly charted. But deep in the Bay of Bengal, the ocean quickly proves us wrong. As your small boat pushes toward the Andaman Islands, the open blue water disappears. You enter a thick, tangled maze of ancient mangroves. The air here is instantly heavier, smelling strongly of wet mud, rotting wood, and crushed salt leaves. The sunlight struggles to break through the dense green canopy above. It is incredibly quiet until the heavy silence is suddenly broken by the loud, echoing splash of a massive saltwater crocodile sliding off a muddy bank. This archipelago feels like a lost world because, geographically, it actually is one. These islands are not just random rocks scattered in the sea. They are the jagged, exposed peaks of a massive, completely submerged mountain range that stretches all the way from Myanmar down to Indonesia. The deep ocean has always acted as a giant, protective moat. Because of this extreme isolation, human history here completely froze in place. Just a few miles across the water sits North Sentinel Island. Deep inside its thick jungle lives one of the very last, completely uncontacted tribes on the entire planet. They have fiercely and successfully guarded their shores for tens of thousands of years, entirely rejecting the modern world. It is strictly illegal for anyone to go near their beach. To this day, their true numbers, their language, and their daily lives remain a total mystery. The Andamans remind us that some wild places still belong entirely to the shadows. But further east, in the warm waters off the coast of Cambodia, the dark ocean doesn't hide its secrets. It illuminates them. As the sun finally sinks below the horizon, the black water doesn't go to sleep. It wakes up, violently coming alive with a strange, glowing magic that looks exactly like a mirror reflecting the stars. Number 12. Koh Rong, Cambodia. Most people think the ocean goes to sleep when the sun goes down. But on some rare coastlines, the darkness is exactly what wakes it up. Standing on the edge of Koh Rong, the night air is thick with the heat of the Cambodian jungle. There are no streetlights here, no distant city glow. The beach is completely pitch black. You can only hear the slow, heavy drag of the tide washing over the sand. But then you step into the water. With every single step, the dark ocean explodes in bright electric blue. When you run your hand through the surface, it looks like you are tossing handfuls of glowing stars into the air. It looks like magic, but it is actually a massive, silent alarm system. These waters are packed with millions of microscopic plankton. When the water is suddenly disturbed by a crashing wave, a passing fish, or your foot, a chemical reaction inside their tiny bodies fires off a bright flash of light. Biologists call it a burglar alarm. The plankton glow to startle their tiny predators, or to act like a bright beacon in the dark, calling in much larger fish to come and eat whatever is trying to attack them. Because this island is so remote and entirely cut off from the heavy light pollution of the mainland, the dark water here puts on one of the brightest natural light shows on the planet. It is a quiet, glowing defense mechanism hidden entirely in the dark. But if we travel halfway across the world to the bright baking coast of Mexico, we find a much heavier kind of defense. A haunting, weathered stone fortress built by an ancient civilization, standing firm on the edge of a jagged cliff, watching a turquoise sea that eventually brought their ruin. Number 11. Tulum, Mexico. Most ancient cities were built to look inward, focused on their own towering temples and busy central plazas. But when you stand on the edge of this massive cliff, you realize the builders of this city were staring straight out at the open ocean. The tropical heat here is incredibly heavy. It bakes the gray, weathered stone, radiating back off the massive walls that completely surround the ruins. Below the cliff, the Caribbean Sea is a bright, blinding turquoise. It crashes relentlessly against the rocks, filling the air with the sharp smell of salt spray, exactly as it has for thousands of years. This is Tulum, and its location is no accident. Originally, the Mayans called this coastal fortress Zama, which translates to the City of Dawn. Because it faces directly east, it catches the very first light of the morning sun rising over the sea. But that massive stone tower, sitting right on the edge of the cliff, the one they call El Castillo, wasn't just a quiet place for priests to pray. It was actually a highly engineered lighthouse. Just offshore lies the second largest barrier reef in the world. It is a hidden, jagged wall of sharp coral that easily ripped the bottoms out of countless ships. To safely reach the white sand beach, ancient Mayan merchants in heavy wooden canoes had to wait until dark. They would paddle out and line up their boats perfectly with the glowing firelight burning inside the two small windows of that tall stone tower. If they strayed even a few feet from that exact line of light, the reef would completely tear them apart. Tulum was a busy, wealthy trading hub, a stoic fortress of stone perched right on the edge of the water. But eventually, those same waves carried the massive Spanish galleons that brought the entire empire to an end. It is a haunting, silent city that completely surrendered to the sea. But if we leave this bright turquoise coast and travel deep into the harsh, dry islands of Indonesia, we won't find the ruins of a lost civilization. We will find a living piece of prehistory, a brutally hot, wind-swept landscape where the undisputed rulers are the largest, heaviest, and most dangerous reptiles left on the planet. Number 10. Komodo Island, Indonesia. We all grow up learning that dragons are just myths. Stories invented to make the dark forests seem a little more exciting. But when you step onto this island, you quickly realize the monsters are completely real. The heat here hits you like a physical weight. It is dry, baking the tall, yellow savanna grass until it crunches loudly under your boots. The air smells faintly of dust and hot salt. There is an eerie, heavy tension on this island. You don't walk carelessly. You watch every single shadow. And yet this brutal landscape hides a strange, soft beauty. The beach you just walked across isn't white or gold. It is a striking, pale pink. It looks almost unnatural against the bright blue water. That color comes from millions of microscopic, red-shelled organisms called foraminifera, crushed by the ocean and mixed perfectly with the white sand. It is a beautiful, quiet shoreline, but you cannot stay on the beach for long, because the true rulers of this island are always watching. When a Komodo dragon finally steps out of the brush, the sheer size of it stops your heart. They can grow up to 10 feet long and weigh well over 300 pounds. For a very long time, scientists assumed these lizards grew to this massive size simply because they were trapped on these tiny islands with absolutely no other large predators. But recent fossil discoveries prove that theory completely wrong. These giant reptiles didn't evolve here at all. They actually originated in Australia millions of years ago. During the last ice age, when the oceans were drastically lower, they simply walked across ancient dry land bridges into Indonesia. When the earth eventually warmed and the heavy seas rose again, the bridges vanished. The dragons were trapped. They are the ultimate survivors, heavy refugees from a forgotten prehistoric world. Komodo is a harsh, violent domain where nature is fiercely in control, completely ignoring the rules of modern time. But halfway across the world, floating just off the coast of Panama, there is a very different kind of sanctuary, a sprawling maze of exactly 365 tiny palm-fringed islands, governed by a quiet indigenous society that simply refuses to let the modern world wash ashore. Number 9. San Blas Islands. Panama, imagine trying to buy a piece of paradise. You have all the money in the world. You find the perfect white sand beach. But the owners look at you and simply say no. When your small boat pulls into the San Blas archipelago, the water turns a pale, milky turquoise. The only sound is the soft scrape of a heavy wooden canoe hitting the shoreline. The warm Caribbean breeze carries the sweet, rich smell of roasting plantains and heavy salt. There are exactly 365 tiny islands scattered out here, one for every single day of the year. Some are large enough to hold tightly packed villages of bamboo huts. Others are nothing more than a single palm tree standing on a lonely circle of sand. But you will not find a single massive hotel chain or foreign-owned resort anywhere in this water. That is because the indigenous Guna people simply refused to sell it. Back in 1925, the Panamanian government tried to force the Guna to abandon their traditional clothes and adopt modern ways. Instead of giving in, the Guna staged a fierce, highly organized revolution, and they actually won today. This massive archipelago is an autonomous province. They answer entirely to their own leaders, and by strict Guna law, absolutely no foreigner is ever allowed to buy the land. You are welcome to visit their home, but you can never own it, because they protected their borders so fiercely. The rhythm of life here completely paused. Women sit in the deep shade of the palms, carefully sewing bright, complex layers of fabric known as molas. Men navigate the shallow, treacherous reefs in hand-carved wooden boats, hunting for fish exactly as their grandfathers did. It is a quiet, powerful society that looked at the rushing, anxious modern world and firmly locked the door. San Blas is a flat, peaceful maze of sandbars, perfectly guarding an ancient way of life. But if we leave the Caribbean and travel deep into the South Pacific, the islands do not lay flat, they rise up violently. We are heading toward a towering, jagged wall of green rock that looks exactly like the majestic, forgotten home of ancient gods. Number 8, Moorea, French Polynesia. When you picture a mountain, you usually think of massive continents crashing together. You don't expect to find a row of jagged, emerald spearheads shooting straight up from the floor of the deep ocean. But as your ferry crosses the narrow channel from Tahiti, the island of Moorea slowly appears through the mist. The air here is thick and sweet. It smells intensely of wild pineapple and damp, dark earth. The clouds hang very low, looking as though they are physically caught on the sharp, violent edges of the high rock. It doesn't look like a normal island. It looks exactly like the majestic, forgotten home of ancient gods. And if you ask the locals, they will tell you it actually is. When you look up at the towering skyline, one peak immediately catches your eye. Mount Muaputa. If you squint, you can see a massive, perfect hole punched right through the solid rock near the very top of the summit. Geologists will tell you that Moorea is just the crumbling rim of a massive, ancient volcano, and that the hole is simply a strange result of heavy wind and rain eroding the dying stone. But the ancient Polynesians had a much better explanation. The local legend says that long ago, the god of thieves tried to quietly steal a neighboring mountain in the dead of night. A great warrior named Pai woke up and threw his heavy magical spear across the island to stop the theft. His aim was slightly off. The spear missed the god, but it struck the mountain so violently that it pierced straight through the rock, leaving that massive open eye staring out over the Pacific forever. Standing in the shadow of these green walls, the legend feels entirely possible. The island is completely overwhelming, a dramatic and towering fortress that commands the ocean around it. But if we leave these tropical waters and travel southwest, plunging into the much colder, lonely waters of the Tasman Sea, the grand drama completely disappears. We arrive at a tiny, highly restricted speck of land, a quiet place where humanity finally learned to step back, leaving an incredibly fragile balance perfectly and safely undisturbed. Number 7, Lord Howe Island, Australia. If you want to visit this island, you have to be one of the lucky ones. As your small plane banks over the Tasman Sea, you see a tiny, crescent-shaped sliver of land. It looks incredibly lonely out here, 600 miles from the Australian mainland. The air is remarkably crisp. It smells of wood smoke and damp Kentia palms. There are no power lines, no cell towers, just the sound of wind rushing through the dark green canopy of Mount Gower. The reason it feels so empty is simple. The island has a hard limit. Only 400 visitors are allowed at any one time. It is a strict rule that keeps the peace from breaking. But Lord Howe is hiding a biological mystery that actually shouldn't exist. This island is home to the world's most southerly coral reef. Geographically, the water here should be way too cold for coral to survive, but a warm, fast-moving current from the north acts like a giant underwater radiator, pumping tropical heat into this specific pocket of the ocean. Because of that warmth, life here is a beautiful, confusing mix. You can stand on a beach and see cold water fish from the deep south swimming right alongside bright tropical species that belong in the equator. But the real survivor is on land. For years, scientists thought the Lord Howe stick insect, a creature as big as a human hand, had been wiped out by rats from shipwrecks. They called it the land lobster and declared it extinct. Then, in 2001, a few climbers found a tiny colony of them living on a single vertical rock spire rising out of the ocean nearby. They had been hiding in the dark for 80 years. Lord Howe is a place that proves if you just leave a piece of the world alone, nature will find a way to hold on. It is a quiet, highly guarded secret in the middle of a cold sea. But if we head back into the Caribbean, the water warms up again. We are looking for the absolute purest blue on the map. A place where the ocean floor is so white and the water so shallow that the horizon seems to vanish into a dream of light. Number 6. Turks and Caicos, Grace Bay. Have you ever looked at a photo of the ocean and assumed the colors were faked? That someone must have turned the saturation up until the blue looked impossible? When you stand on the edge of Grace Bay, you realize the camera was actually telling the truth. The sand here feels like walking on cold, wet silk. It is a blinding, brilliant white, and the water is a shade of pale, glowing turquoise that looks like it's being lit from underneath by a giant lamp. The air is soft, carrying the faint, clean scent of the open Atlantic. It is incredibly calm, but this perfect clarity isn't just a lucky coincidence. It's the result of a massive underwater cleaning system. Just a mile offshore, a gargantuan barrier reef, one of the largest in the world, acts like a heavy stone wall. It takes the full, violent energy of the deep ocean waves and breaks them before they ever reach the shore. Because the water inside the reef doesn't churn or crash, the sand on the bottom never gets stirred up. There are no rivers on these islands. Not one. That means there is no muddy runoff, no silt, and no dirt ever leaking into the sea. The water is naturally filtered by the limestone and the coral until it is essentially distilled. Centuries ago, these calm, clear shallows were a nightmare for the Spanish treasure fleets. The water was so transparent that it hid the true depth of the jagged reefs. More than a few heavy galleons, weighted down with silver and gold, ran aground here simply because the captains couldn't believe how shallow the floor really was. Grace Bay is a masterpiece of light and stillness, a place where the ocean is so clean it feels like looking through air. But as we move toward the remote edge of the Andaman Sea, the bright blue gives way to something deeper. We are looking for a tiny, distant sanctuary that hasn't changed in 1,000 years, a place where the modern world is just a faint whisper, and the islands still belong to the sea nomads. Number 5. Koh Lipe, Thailand. Most maps of Thailand show a busy, crowded coast. But if you keep going south, almost until you hit the border of Malaysia, the noise starts to fade. The air on Koh Lipe is different. It's sweet, thick with the scent of wood-fired fish and the heavy perfume of blooming frangipani. You don't hear cars here. Instead, you hear the low, rhythmic thumping of long-tail boat engines and the soft, dry rustle of palm leaves. For a long time, the rest of the world didn't even know this place existed. It was the private domain of the Yurak Lawoi, the people of the sea. These nomadic explorers spent centuries living on wooden boats, navigating the Andaman Sea by the stars and the currents. To them, Koh Lipe wasn't a destination. It was a safe harbor. Local legend says they were granted this land by the king of Thailand, because they were the only ones who knew how to survive its remote rocky shores. Even today, if you watch the sunset from the beach, you'll see the sea nomads' traditional ceremonies. Tiny wooden boats filled with fingernail clippings and locks of hair, set adrift into the dark water to carry away any bad luck from the tribe. Underneath the turquoise waves, the geography is just as unique. Koh Lipe is surrounded by a massive deep-water trench that brings cold, nutrient-rich currents straight to the surface. It's why the soft corals here look so strange. They are bright, neon purples and soft pinks that you usually only find much deeper in the ocean. It is a small, vibrant sanctuary where the old ways of the sea are still being whispered in the wind. Koh Lipe feels like a gentle, low-lying secret. But if we travel across the globe to the Caribbean, the land stops being so quiet. It shoots violently upward. We are heading to an island dominated by two massive emerald giants, volcanic spikes that rise so sharply from the sea, they look like they were carved by the hand of a titan. Number 4. St. Lucia, the Pitons. If you ever want to feel truly small, you need to stand on the southwest coast of St. Lucia. As you sail into the bay, the warm Caribbean air suddenly turns cool and damp. You're entering the shadow of the giants. Two massive green pyramids of solid stone, the Pitons, tower over 2,000 feet above your head. The smell of sulfur from the nearby volcanic springs hangs faintly in the air, mixed with the rich, chocolatey scent of the cocoa trees growing on the lower slopes. It looks like the land was pushed up by a violent force. And it was. These aren't just mountains, they are volcanic plugs. About 5 million years ago, a massive volcano here began to die. The lava inside the vents cooled and hardened into solid, unyielding rock. Over the eons, the softer volcanic mountain around them simply washed away into the sea, leaving behind these two stubborn vertical cores. They are the skeletal remains of a prehistoric world. For the early Kalinago people, these peaks were sacred. They believed the mountains were the physical home of their gods, and for a very long time, climbing them was strictly forbidden. Even today, the geography is so steep and so rugged that some parts of the Pitons have never been touched by a human foot. Rare plants and colorful birds thrive on these vertical cliffs, completely protected by the sheer incline of the rock. It is a fortress that requires no walls. Standing here, between these two silent guardians, you realize that nature is often at its most beautiful when it is at its most aggressive. St. Lucia is a dramatic, vertical masterpiece shaped by fire and time. But if we leave the Caribbean and travel far to the north, toward the quiet waters of the East China Sea, the drama changes. We are heading to a subtropical chain of islands where the secret to a long life isn't found in a bottle. It is hidden in the deep roots of the forest and the quiet, starry nights of the coast. Number 3. Okinawa, Japan, Yaeyama Islands. We spend so much of our lives trying to outrun time. We look for the newest science or the latest pill to help us live just a little bit longer. But here in the far southern reaches of Japan, people seem to have a different relationship with the clock. The Yaeyama Islands are a world away from the neon lights of Tokyo. The air is soft and salty. It smells of damp earth and the subtle, clean scent of blooming jasmine. As you kayak deep into the ancient mangrove forests of Iriomote, the only sound is the rhythmic drip of water from your paddle hitting the dark, still surface. This is one of the world's famous blue zones, places where people regularly live to be over 100 years old. For a long time, researchers thought it was just the diet of purple sweet potatoes and local seaweed. But if you spend enough time sitting on these beaches, you realize it is the environment itself. The geography here forces you to slow down. On the island of Taketomi, there is a local legend about the star sand. If you look closely at the beach, you'll find tiny star-shaped grains mixed in with the white sand. Geologists say they are the husks of tiny marine organisms, but the locals will tell you they are the children of the North Star and the Southern Cross, born in the ocean and washed ashore to rest. Every night, the sky above these islands is so clear and so devoid of light that you can see the Milky Way with your naked eye. It is a constant reminder of our place in the universe. Scientists now believe that this deep connection to nature, the clean air, the physical work in the gardens, and the lack of modern stress, literally keeps the cells in the human body from aging. It is a sanctuary where the secret to longevity is simply to stop fighting the natural rhythm of the day. Okinawa is a quiet, subtropical dream where time seems to stretch out and breathe. But if we cross the Indian Ocean to the world's 4th largest island, the rhythm of life changes again. We are heading to a place that has been disconnected from the rest of the world for 88 million years. A massive red earth paradise where evolution took a sharp turn into the bizarre. Number 2, Madagascar. Nosy BF. If you were to design a planet from scratch, you might come up with something that looks a lot like Madagascar. When you step off a boat onto the island of Nosy B, the first thing that hits you isn't the smell of the sea. It's the overwhelming heavy scent of ylang-ylang flowers and vanilla. The air is thick, sweet, and incredibly warm. It feels like you've stepped into a world that's been running on its own separate clock for millions of years. And biologically speaking, it has. About 88 million years ago, Madagascar broke away from the giant landmass of India and drifted off into the Indian Ocean alone. It became a massive floating laboratory because it was so completely cut off. Evolution went down a very strange path. If you walk into the forest at dusk, you'll hear them before you see them. A haunting, ghost-like wail echoing through the trees. Those are the lemurs. They exist absolutely nowhere else on Earth. On Nosy Be, you might find the black lemur, a creature with bright orange eyes that looks like it stepped right out of a dream. But the island is also home to a local legend that's a bit more practical. For centuries, sailors believed that if you spoke a secret wish to the giant sacred banyan trees on the island, the roots, which grow down from the branches like heavy wooden curtains, would trap your wish and hold it until it came true. Looking at those ancient tangled roots today, it's easy to see why they look like a living fortress, holding the very earth together. Every animal, every leaf, and every insect. Here is a survivor of total, magnificent isolation. It is a fragmented paradise where nature was allowed to get weird, away from the prying eyes of the rest of the world. Madagascar is a place where life was shaped by a long, lonely history. But as we leave this red earth island and head toward our final destination, the land begins to disappear entirely. We are moving toward a vast, low-lying nation of nearly 1,200 islands. A place where the water doesn't just surround the land, it threatens to consume it. Number 1, Tuamotu Archipelago, French Polynesia. Most people travel to find somewhere new, but you come to the Tuamotus to simply disappear. When you arrive here, you realize that everything you know about what an island should look like is wrong. There are no mountains, no high cliffs, no hills. Instead, you're standing on a thin, fragile ring of crushed coral that is barely 6 feet above the waves. The air is remarkably clean, smelling only of sun-baked salt and the cool, deep ocean. If you stand in the middle of the road, you can see the violent, dark blue Pacific crashing on one side and the perfectly still, pale turquoise lagoon on the other. You are living on a tightrope made of sand. Early European explorers were terrified of this place. They called it the dangerous archipelago because these atolls are so low, they are almost invisible from the deck of a ship. Sailors would be scrolling through calm waters one minute, and the next, they'd be splintering against a hidden reef that they never saw coming. It is a graveyard of old wooden ships, all swallowed by a land that refuses to rise up and meet the sky. But there is a reason these islands stay so flat. This is the final stage of a volcano's life. Millions of years ago, a massive mountain stood here. Over time, the heavy rocks sank back into the Earth's crust, leaving only the ring of coral that had grown around its waist. The locals have a deep, quiet respect for this balance. They live by the pari, a traditional understanding that the ocean is the true owner of the land. They don't build massive, heavy structures because they know eventually the water will want its space back. Out here, the horizon doesn't just feel far away. It feels infinite. It is the one place on Earth where you can truly feel the curve of the planet standing on a thin silver of white sand in the middle of a blue void. The Tuamotus are a reminder that we are all just guests on a very old, very watery world. We have traveled from the spice-filled alleys of Zanzibar to the glowing bays of Cambodia and the prehistoric shadows of Komodo. We have seen places that look fake, but are as real as the salt on your skin. These 20 locations prove that our world is still full of mystery, if you are willing to sail far enough past the edge of the map to find it. It is a strange thing to realize that while we sit in our living rooms, these places are out there right now. The salt is still crusting on the rocks in the Galapagos. The plankton are still waiting for the sun to go down in Cambodia, so they can light up the sea. These landscapes don't need us to admire them to exist, but seeing them changes how we think about our own lives. They remind us that the world is much bigger, much older, and much more resilient than the small circles we usually move in. We've spent the last hour traveling to the very edges of the map, to the places that look like a filmmaker's dream but are actually carved out of real rock, real water, and real history. If this journey across the blue parts of our globe gave you a moment of peace, or maybe sparked a bit of that old familiar wanderlust, I'd love to have you along for the next one. Click the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. We have a lot more of this planet to see, and I don't want you to miss a single mile of it. Until next time, keep looking for the places that remind you why it's so incredible to be here. I'm Tropical Travel, and I'll see you in the next documentary.